right, good evening. A little brand new, well, it's kind of brand new. It's pretty new. Breaking Benjamin, and some of their stuff is really, really good. And I like this new title or this new song that they've released called "Awaken." Anyway, let me get my board, excuse me, ready to go. I don't know if get rid of last week's episode. That way I don't get confused and edit the wrong audio and post it and realize how stupid I am and pull it down and then, I don't know, edit the right audio and get that file in order. All right, let me get the recording started and we shall proceed with all the insanity that is the federal government and the idiocy that, if you could bag it up and sell it, you'd be a billionaire within a few hours. And then you could just shut the whole operation down, move to an island by yourself, and just get away from all the stupid. But anyway, let's get the ball rolling, shall we?
In the restaurant of life, we're putting freedom back on the menu. It's the Missouri Liberty Report with John Williams, working with grassroots organizations and legislatures to make Missouri the freest state in the nation. Let freedom ring.
All right, folks, and we are back with another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Thanks so much for joining us again this evening. We got a lot of good stuff. Well, I don't know if good stuff is the right terminology to use when we're talking about Harris and Trump and everything else, but we got a lot of stuff to talk about, that's for sure. And listen, guys, if I was a type of, if I could say, if I was good at citing a quick prayer before we really get going, I would pray that by the time you hear all these audio clips, that your IQ hasn't just went right down the toilet. Because listening to Kamala Harris and Trump and some of these other people talk is, and we may get into this, David. David says that Israel's bombing Iran, which Brandon and I were just talking about that before the show. And we had one other. Oh, Brandon, I know you can't see the live chat. David Dwyer says, I'm about to drive over to Brandon's house to give him a background. I live 5 minutes away. And Brandon and I discussed that, and I'll just leave it as a surprise for next week. Things are probably going to look a little different there in Brandon's part of the show. All right, folks, I don't want to dilly-dally around too much here. I guess we'll start off with, listen, folks, I know we've talked about this on other times in the show, while Brandon's been on with me, before Brandon's been on with me, the whole transgender movement. I want to hit this article first. Brandon sent this article over to me the other day because I actually somehow, as I scrolled through X, did not see the article. Now, I believe that in Tom Wood's email list, he sent out an email that kind of talked about this article a little bit, but I just never took the time to go look at it. So I'll just pull it up right now here. Brandon, have you read it all so you can kind of just, if you want to roll through this and kind of hit the high points on this?
So it was a $10 million project. I can't remember all the specifics, so I'll pull it up too. It was a multi-million-dollar project, research study where they were trying to see if transgender surgeries actually made kids happier after the surgery. And the doctor who was in charge of the study, decided she wasn't going to post the results because she was afraid that it would be bad for the use of the surgeries because they don't work, because the surgeries didn't help mental health. And so she was trying to hide that. Yeah, it was a $10 million study. Yeah,
I believe the words. I believe the words she used were she didn't want the findings weaponized. It's like, well, if you're not, I don't know what better way to weaponize either side of an argument by just failing to submit your findings because they don't fit your agenda. You're going to weaponize anyway. When people see this, They're going to be like, "Hey, lady, you forgot to post some stuff." And, what are you talking about? Like, oh, the mental. Now, down the article, I know it said that there was a. Let me see if I can find it. There was a study done in somewhere in Europe, and they made it sound like it did help the mental health of the kids, but apparently it's not working over here. Let's see. Oh, it was a Dutch study in 2011. Let's see. It says, which is the primary scientific research cited by proponents of giving kids puberty blockers. That study of 70 kids found that children treated with puberty blockers reported better mental health and fewer behavioral and emotional problems. I mean, honestly, folks, you get into the abortion issue, trans issues, all these issues like this that really divide people, you're going to find studies on both sides of the aisle. One's going to give you a rosy outlook and say, this works perfectly good. And the other side's going to be like, hey, shouldn't mess with a kid's natural transition of life, where you hit a certain age and you go through puberty and your body goes through changes and all these things as you grow into adulthood. I don't know, Brand. I don't know about you. I don't understand how anyone. I mean, I understand. It drives me crazy that these scientists are so. I'm going to use scientists in air quotes because I feel like some of these people got their degree out of a Cracker Jack box. But regardless, I don't see how these people can look at anyone straight in the eye, deadpan, just like no emotion, and go, it's perfectly acceptable to block the natural transition that your body goes through. And, nothing bad's really going to happen. I don't understand how you can expect me or expect people with more than two brain cells to rub together to believe you when you say that. You know what I'm saying, Brandon?
I just don't understand the people who will subject their children to that. That's the hard part I have wrapped my mind around is doing that to one of my own, doing that to a kid. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things we don't let kids do in this country. And I think making them wait until they're at least 18 to decide if you're an adult and you want to do that, I think that's weird. I think that's wrong. But you shouldn't. I'm not going to stop you from doing it. But you shouldn't let kids do it, and you shouldn't be a parent letting a kid do it. Super wrong.
Yeah, and you being a relatively new father, first time father. I mean, it's one of those things when. Here's something to add to what you said, Brandon. When you're a parent and your kids are growing right in front of your eyes, and it seems like you blink one day and they're graduating out of school or they're going to college or they're getting a job. It seems like you blink a few times and your kids are grown. But it's cool to watch them grow and learn, and you try to guide them to where they're not crappy, horrible people and turning into serial killers or something. You're like, oh, I hope my kids don't murder anybody. But and how you look at I've seen people like literally wanting to do this to 8-year-olds. You know what I'm saying? And how you look at your kid at 10 or 11 years old and go, I like you, kid, but it'd be really, I would be happier if you would change your gender for me, because I feel like I had a boy. I always really wanted a girl. So I remember when you were 4, you told me you like playing with dolls. So I think you might be a girl. I feel as if I believe that there are parents out there who do these ridiculous things for other people to like come up and pat them on the back and treat them like heroes, which is absolutely just crazy. If I saw a parent, if I knew a parent, I was like, well, I'm going to let my kid transition. Like, oh, how old are they? 11. My reaction's not going to be, Well, okay. I'm going to say this and say it as nice as possible. Maybe not. I want to give you a pat on the back, but I want to give you a pat on the back really hard near a flight of stairs. I want to treat you like a slinky, fun to push downstairs. That's the only pat on the back you're going to get from me. But then the more insane part is that other people will treat those parents as heroes. Jordan Peterson, I remember him talking, I think it was on Joe Rogan's show, talking about how there was this woman and she said both of her kids were trans. And he's like, do you know statistically the odds that you would have two kids who had body dysmorphia or thought they were the other? No, that's not your kids. That's you psychopath. And here's another thing, Brandon, real quick, and then you just give me your opinion. It is, I don't have any faith in the state taking kids away from parents and handing them off to somebody else unless it's just horrific. And then I would hope that a family member. But when people do this to their kids, I understand why people are like, they should not have custody of their children anymore. It doesn't matter how we get rid of, get those kids away from them, just do that. I understand the sentiment when you see parents behaving in that way, why you would be hell-bent on doing just about anything you could to get those kids out of that home, because you can just see it's just overflowing with abuse. So I get the sentiment. I really do.
Yeah, that's a difficult one because it's not like the state's going to, like you said, the state's not going to do any better at raising your kids than even someone down that. I mean, you know what I'm saying? That's a difficult one because you hear a lot of horror stories from Child Protective Services and how that's not usually a good path. So that's tough to balance right there for sure. But what I see a lot is society playing on the vulnerability of like teenage emotions to pit them against their parents oftentimes. Like you'll see it, like the societal influences will, even if your parents aren't the one making you do this, like you'll get this pressure at school because it's like trendy to be either bi or gay or, or trans. And then they want you, like in California schools, you're not allowed to tell the parent if the child is if the child declares that they're trans to a teacher, the teacher's not allowed to tell the parent, if I'm not mistaken, in California. And that's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, you hit it right on the head when you said, even if it's not the parents, the social influences on these kids, the pressure that they're under anyway because of how public education is, and then the societal forces tugging at them, and then being in the public education system, being in these schools, depending on what area you're in, you're going to have activist teachers or activist school boards pushing these ideals on these kids. So they've got all people in different geographies, people from different generations, just cramming it down their throat. And so the kids who don't know how to maybe have an understanding of how to buck the system and go, listen, you do whatever you want, just leave me out of it, because their parents don't educate them on how to stand up against something that you feel is wrong. And so, and of course, when most kids, when they're in school, I was not one of those kids, fortunately, but most kids want to be cool, right? They don't want to be seen as nerds or geeks or whatever the phrase you want to throw. They want to be cool. They want to be in the cliques, right? So if you start heaping this crap on them, and then suddenly the cool kids are into it, they're going to draw a few kids. I'm not saying the majority, but the ones who just can't handle not being cool as not being the one of the cool kids or afraid they're going to be bullied or made fun of. They're gonna jump on board. When my daughter was in school, there was a rash of kids just cutting themselves. I mean, it's just there was a lot of girls my daughter's age cutting themselves, and it's like, but some of them wouldn't have done it if they hadn't seen other girls doing it or hearing about it. So that influence, and it's like, okay, well, what gets into your head that you want to cut? And I don't know. I know there's mental health things that go along with this. I'm not an expert. It's just that I think if we're looking at this, things like the transing, self-harm, you want another reason to keep your kids out of public school and homeschool them? There's another good reason. I mean, the trans thing's always it's becoming more and more. It's almost like it's being romanticized by the media, a lot of people in public education. It's being pushed at the kids. It's becoming, and they're trying to normalize it. Something else I wanted to that you hit on, Brandon, that I wanted to talk about too, is again, pitting the teenagers or the kids in school against their parents, because the one thing the state cannot have is a strong nuclear family. You have to tear them apart. You tear the kids away from their parents, you can fill their head full of lies and falsehoods and just dumpster fires of garbage information. And then the kid's not going to tell their parents because they think their parents aren't cool. They're not hip. They're old-fashioned. They're racist. They're this or they're that. So, yeah, pitting the teenagers or the kids against their parents is a perfect way to indoctrinate them, because those kids aren't going to go home and tell their parents everything they've learned. And you have activist teachers probably maybe telling the kids that what, they talk about in class doesn't need to, go home to the parents. It's hard to say. I'm not in public school, thank God, because I would be in the principal's office all the time for being a horse's patoot, because I would have to call out the BS every time the teacher turned around. So it's probably a good thing that I'm just working a 9-to-5 job now. But anyway, go ahead, Brandon.
Oh, no, I think you pretty much summed it up there. I was going to touch on the mental health aspect of it too. Like we were saying, it's not that every kid on the planet is susceptible to this way of thinking. They're preying on the ones that are having issues, the ones that are already having difficulties with themselves, and they're manipulating their thought process. And it's multifaceted, which is why it's a systemic thing. Like, you see it in public schools and you see it in the media. Like, the new purse dog for celebrities is a trans kid. So, I mean, you like you said, you see it everywhere. And so, like you said, I think there's like it's a play to, which forces are driving it, or just a collective forces agree that this is what's best for their interests, are in charge of it. But yeah, you can definitely tell in society. It's the same thing with racism. You saw it after like around the Michael Brown hands up, don't shoot fake narrative time, that it was the media just started picking up on these stories, en masse. Every story had a race tone to it. And they'll hide certain races if it doesn't fit the narrative, and they'll exploit certain races if it does. And it's not an accident. They use it in politics. They use it in the media. It's the same thing with the trans thing. It's all, there's something at play here. There's a force that's doing this.
Okay, I think you just had a great slogan right when you started off on what you just said. It would be a really it would be one of those shirts, if you wore it in public, would probably get you the stink eye a lot. But the quote you just said, the new pocket dogs for
trans kids are the new purse dogs for celebrities.
Yeah.
Yes, I read that somewhere. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't make that up.
It would still make a great T-shirt. It'd be a very controversial T-shirt.
Oh,
that would be a great T-shirt, man. You want to talk about? Hey, here's the thing. people would probably buy that shirt just to infuriate the idiots who are like, oh, you don't like trans kids? No, moron, I don't. I think it's bad. I think it's awful. And I think you're a douche canoe for wanting to do that to children. Henceforth, I bought this T-shirt. And I wear it proudly wherever I go. Like Nate from Good Morning Liberty. He's like, you want people to come up and shake your hand, which I don't. Listen, they are the guys that created the God Hates Feds T-shirts and hoodies and all that, right? So I have the hoodie. I love the hoodie. Nate says if he wears it to, these big conventions and stuff he goes to, he's got people coming up shaking his hand like, oh, I love your shirt, whatever. When I wore my hoodie into work, I saw people's eyes go down, read the words, come up, and go away from me. They wouldn't even look at me. Like I was about to be struck by lightning at any moment. Like I was a cursed being, and they didn't want to be close to me. It's like, it's a joke. It's a play on words from that idiot pastor from, I can't remember the name of the church. The one that said God hates.
Westboro Baptist Church?
Yeah, the Westboro Baptist Church. God hates... a bad slander or a slang term for a gay person. Starts with an F, ends with an S. I'll just leave it at that. But it's just a play on that. And I think I love the hoodie. I absolutely love it. And if I didn't get the reaction that I got, I may not wear it as much. But any place I wear it, they'll make eye contact, especially like I went to the eye doctor when I got my eye exam last year. I walked in. It was a cool day. Had the hoodie on. Walked up to check in. Gal looked at me. I watched her eyes glance down. You see a micro expression. Eyes come back up. They check me in. I sit down. I go in the room. The doctor comes in. She looks, eye contact. Eyes drift down to the words. Back up, micro expression. I'm like, I am just hitting it out of the park today with these people. Love it. But you are right. Here's something else that's sad, Brandon. It's like if people have these kids, it's like they're carrying around a trophy, like they did something, like they won like it's a gold medal. They just won the 400-meter relay. It's like you didn't do anything but just literally do physical and mental harm to your kid. You abused your kid. There's no trophies for that. I mean, maybe in hell, but on earth you shouldn't get a trophy for that. You should get the crap beat out of you for that. Or at least thumped in the noggin a couple times. Or as Lewis Black said, just take him out for a day of electroshock therapy, just to get him back on track. But awards and people lauding you for being, oh my God, what a brave parent. No, you're sick.
Doesn't this, another aspect of this story, though, is how much more we can trust the science now. I feel like I can trust the science again.
Yes.
They're suppressing studies so we won't weaponize them. That's what's going to rebuild trust into science, is suppressing studies.
Yeah, that's a good way to build up my faith and trust in anything, is when you don't give me anything, in this instance, anything.
Because a lot of these, the surgeries are done, and like not the surgeries necessarily, but also the puberty blockers, which is what the study was. I misspoke earlier when I said the study was about surgeries. It's actually about puberty blockers for minors, but they're given by doctors. And when you saw a bunch of people around the time where this movement really started taking off, is you saw a bunch of medical associations and doctors associations all praise this stuff. Like a lot of them were coming out, oh, you have to. No, you have to do these puberty blockers because it's, the mental health, blah, blah, blah. And so it's the same entities that gave us the COVID lies and the, the response to COVID lies more than anything. And so, yeah, like I said, you just can't trust the science at all.
And to me, I know this sounds, maybe it sounds hyperbolic or whatever. I'm glad. I hope this does. I hope this ruins people's faith and trust in medicine. The direction that medicine has taken in the last decade alone. I hope this does. I hope this has more people questioning anything that these researchers, doctors, big pharma, any of these people tell them. I hope they take a step back, dig deep, look at it and go, this seems shady. Well, it probably is shady. Anymore, 90% of it is shady business. So I hope it does. I hope that people's faith and trust in the science, Dr. Fauci himself, I hope that faith and trust just continues to wither away. Nothing would make me happier at this point than watching people lose trust in the institutions that we've been propagandized into thinking are just, again, these benign entities that only want to help us and heal us and solve what ails us, cure what ails us, solve our problems. I hope that continues to erode away and people just go, I don't believe you anymore. You're going to have to do better than that, than just getting somebody in a white coat on a screen telling me this is good for me. You're going to have to do better than that.
I hope you're right, but especially on this particular issue, I don't really have that kind of faith. I think the forces at play are too far entrenched in this position where they can't turn around now. They're just going to have to do what they always do, which is just deny the facts. They're going to come out, they're going to spin this. Like she tried to say, they're like, well, I just didn't release the study because they'll weaponize it. And that's just what the left-wing media is going to parrot on this particular story, especially. Is that, well, it's just that one study. She, because the kids were too happy, she couldn't, they didn't change levels and how their happiness levels with these puberty blockers. I mean, it's just going to go on like that. And like I said, I hope you're right. I hope some people might actually be waking up to, hey, I can make decisions for myself. I don't need, bureaucrats making decisions. I can do my own research from my own studies and decide what I like best. But I don't have faith in this. Like for the parents that are already pushing their kids into this, like subconsciously, like giving favoritism to the children that choose to transition and all that, I don't see them making a turning point. Not until all of society together collectively just goes, we can't do this. Like we now know this is bad for kids. It hurts their body. They regret it long term. Like until all of society is pushing that, I think people hate admitting when they're wrong too. So you're going to see a lot of people hate to admit that they're wrong about this.
No, you're absolutely right. It's just one of my hopes. You're right. I don't see anybody, saying, well, I gotta, I don't see the majority of people just giving up on the scientific medicine and scientific communities and saying, hey, if you guys can't get your act together, we're out. No, you're right. And it's so bad. So we have Netflix and we have like Amazon Prime here at home, right? And we don't have cable. We don't have any of that. So we just have streaming services. And my wife will watch a show that's on like Amazon Prime and you get those, I don't remember the name of the streaming service that Amazon Prime kind of uses to carry some of these shows, but there'll be ads throughout the show.
Stars or something.
It's like Freebie or Free. I don't know.
Yeah, Freebie. Yeah.
Yep. So then you get, I don't know how many times she's been watching something, like she'll binge watch something, and there's just commercial after commercial now. Now the new thing is you got to get the kids real early and give them their RSV vaccine. I keep seeing commercials for RSV vaccines like mad, and it's just it's nothing but fear propaganda trying to scare the parents. It shows parents taking their kid to the emergency room or they're getting put in the hospital for RSV. Oh yeah, they're just pulling on the heartstrings of these parents, and I'm sitting there thinking, I just look over at my wife and go, I wonder how many parents right now are doing this. Just taking their kid to the doctor and getting an RSV vaccine now. Good God.
Dude, I'll tell you what, they're starting to give you less and less choice. Like when I don't remember if I told you, I'll just remind the audience and everybody, but when my baby got discharged from the hospital, before they would release her into our custody, we had to have an appointment set up with a physician. It was like one of the rules for the hospital. And when I was calling around to physicians, I was worried about this because I have a little vaccine hesitancy. And so I just wanted to make sure I could read and have all of my options available to me before I chose a pediatrician. Or not chose a pediatrician, but before the vaccines actually went into my kid. Apparently that's a no-go with like so many pediatricians. We called around to a bunch of them and they were all like, no, like all of them within a certain radius of us, they were all like, no, you have no choice. We're going off of what the American American Association of Pediatrics, they're going off of that schedule. And the multiple doctors that we called said we had no flexibility on that. And so it's kind of sad. And I think RSV might still be an optional one, but I'm just saying pretty soon they're going to make it not optional. They're going to make COVID not optional. I'm shocked they haven't made the flu vaccine for as long as it's been around. I'm shocked they still make that optional because they push it on like the radio as if it's the next polio. And so, yeah, I think I think it's crazy how people don't have more choice in things like that.
No, you're right. I mean, people in the future that have children, I mean, they're just screwed. And, I've been willing to compromise a little bit on this because when I was a kid, they weren't putting 2 and 3 vaccines in the same syringe and jam, And it's like, I do know I've talked to one person that's had 2 kids. And her doctor's like, get the vaccinations. And she looked at her doctor and said, will you allow me, instead of giving them multiples at a time, stretching them out, get 1 here, wait 6 months a year, the next one. And her doctor's like, yeah, that's fine. And she said, I feel more comfortable doing it that. And there has been studies reported that the more they mix these things and, you get 2 or 3 or 4 in one sitting, seems to be much more harmful than what they used to do, which was give you 1 at a time. And not, what is it, the one? It's like the MMR vaccine. That's 3 in 1. And then you're getting that in one leg and they're sticking a needle in the other leg with something else. And it's like, maybe that's the problem. If, and it's a thing. Here's another thing, Brandon. I think if you want to prove to me that the vaccines are safe and effective, then let the parents draw them out over time instead of making this the program that these doctors the majority of these doctors follow, where it's like, oh, they're this many weeks old, they get 5 vaccinations, bam. Of saying, let's start something out where we stretch this out, and then let's look at the health effects of staggering them or jamming 5 of them in at one time. And let's see of course, they're not going to do that because if it proves that you stretching them out over time seems to have far fewer health impacts on a number of kids, then they have to admit they're wrong. But if I'm a parent that, for whatever reason, thinks that I have to give all my kid these vaccinations, again, I'm not a doctor, folks. I'm just saying. I'm not giving you medical advice. But I'm saying that's another option. If you feel like you have to vaccinate your kids, stretch them out. Don't let them piggyback 3 and 4 at one time. Spread them months apart. The thing is, people, I understand it, man. When you got a little kid, especially an infant, you want that infant to be healthy. You want that child to grow up to be a healthy adult. So that fear is always working in your mind. Oh my God, what if they're one of the few, that gets sick and dies from some, hepatitis or something like that? I mean, or the mumps. What if they're the one that dies from mumps and I just could have got him a vaccine and, whatever else? I get it. It plays with your head a little bit. But you got to understand the risk of dying from most of these things is pretty low. Very, very low, in fact. So and I know there's other people that said, hey, with the vaccines, the vaccines aren't the thing that created this era of less disease. It was actually better waste sanitation is what really made the decline of these diseases. So again, not a doctor, never went to medical school. I'm just saying you have options, and exercise those options, and don't go into a doctor's office and have, again, full faith and trust that if he just tells you that he knows the material and it's perfectly okay, that it's perfectly, just to take him at that. Do your research. I bet you probably go online and find some of this material, these inserts out of these vaccines, if you looked hard enough. But just weigh your options. I mean, you're making the best decision you can for your kid and yourself at that point if you literally weigh your options. And that's just not medically. That's a lot of other things in life. Weigh your options. Have the ability to make the choice, and then use that ability to make the right choice for you, yourself, your loved ones, whatever. Just do a little research.
Wasn't it so? I might be wrong about this, but wasn't it Reagan who signed the bill where vaccine manufacturers couldn't be sued?
I want to say that was during. So I think the first time that happened, I think, was the first swine flu, and I don't remember if that was during Nixon's administration. The first swine flu came out. I think they were exempt. Now, it might have been, let me see if I can find that.
Because another aspect to the vaccines, we have to talk about it since we're talking about vaccines, is the money. It might not be Pfizer or Moderna or whoever, but people own these vaccines that go into every child in America. It's a money-making machine. I mean, somebody produces it, a private entity produces it, and sells it to the hospitals and the doctors who give it to your kid, who bill it to your insurance. And every kid going to public school is forced to take them. So, yeah, there's a ton of money involved in it. And I'm sorry if I want to, weigh my options and read into things and have informed consent on specific vaccines. I don't feel like that's a tough thing to ask. So, yeah, like I've been shopping around, possibly using a different pediatrician. It's just, like I said, it's hard to find one.
So it looks like Congress passed that law in 1986 that gives vaccine manufacturers immunity from product liability lawsuits. Somebody wrote in the comments, because vaccine manufacturers were going to leave the marketplace if they didn't. I do know that there's a vaccine. Let me see. That came up in my search. There's also an injury act, so all the vaccine manufacturers have to put money into this fund, but it's totally different. If you know your child's been injured by a vaccine, you go in front of a magistrate and you have to prove to them that your child was vaccine injured, and then you can get compensated for that. But that is just money that goes from the vaccine manufacturers into this pool, and then people can pull from that tub of money. But you can't, it doesn't matter what vaccine it is. If they make a horrible mistake and they say, oh, this one's safe and effective, those words are constantly being thrown about now. If it's not safe and effective and it harms hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, nothing will be done because they've insulated themselves with billions of dollars in lobbying congressmen like mad. So good luck.
Also the open door between the higher ups at these pharmaceutical companies and then the people who sit on the board of the FDA. That goes back and forth like a swinging pendulum. Or if you're, depending on who's funding the studies of what schools, you could, who knows who's funding, certain studies at schools to determine, oh, well, actually, we found out this vaccine doesn't cause that. And they were being paid by the people who made the vaccine.
Yeah. So for those of you who have never read it, and let me make sure I get the actual website correct. So if you go to archive.org, I believe you can find, let's see. I'm going to look up let's see if it'll pull it up. Yeah, so there's a book called Murder by Injection by Eustace Mullins. I don't remember what year this book was put out. I don't see it in the description, but I did. I read it, and from its inception, the AMA was like, "Oh, you if you want your medication to be put in the journal or whatever, cough up the dough." From its inception, the AMA has been corrupt. And so he goes into detail on the. Okay, I got to talk about the polio vaccine real quick because there was something in the book that was crazy about this. It not crazy like, oh, this guy's completely retarded. It's just, so, there was a polio outbreak, and there was one doctor that said, stop giving your kids sugar. Stop giving your kids sugar. So there were states where a bunch of parents are like, okay, cool. And they, the sugar intake in the population dipped down. Well, guess what else dipped down? Cases of polio went down. But the people making the candy bars and stuff were losing a bunch of money. So they, in turn, were handing out free candy to the kids. And sooner or later, pretty soon, the sugar intake went back up, and polio rates seemed to just coincidentally went right up with the sugar intake. So when the sugar intake went down in the population, the polio cases went down. Sugar intake went back up, polio cases went back up. So that's just one thing in the book that he covers. But again, we're talking the 60s when this went down. And so from its inception, you talk about, when you read about the guy who had the iridium mines and using, X-rays and radiation, the dude was giving, he not only himself, his kids, his wife and kids, he wiped his whole house out basically. Because every time they get sick, he'd hit them with radiation. He literally killed himself and his family, his household, with radiation, because at that time they had no idea. Just like, well, found it and I own it, so radiate me every time we get sick. Yeah, he ended up just killing everybody in his house. So if people understood a little better the history of the AMA and the corruption from the beginning, maybe we get some more people to understand that, hey, this is never, it seemingly has never been about healing. It's making a boatload of money off Band-Aids that never actually fix the issue that you have. I was just Tucker Carlson had this pair of one was used to be a head and neck surgeon, and her husband was a lobbyist for Big Pharma and stuff. And they were coming out saying stuff like some of these pharmaceutical companies also are in agriculture. So they sell you crap poison food, and then on the other side, they're selling you the medication to help mask the symptoms of the crap food that they produce. So they're getting money on both ends. You're buying their food, and then you're buying the Band-Aid that you have to use because you're eating the crap poison food that they make. So they're getting it on both sides, in two different economies, the food economy and the medicine economy. They're getting it on both ends, billions of dollars. And it was a very interesting interview. And talking about vaccines again, this YouTube's going to bust us on this one. I don't even care. But they were talking about the hepatitis vaccine. Now, this gal, again, head and neck surgeon, she said that hepatitis vaccine for babies is pretty much useless. Especially the type of hepatitis vaccine that they're given. It's pointless to give that to a baby. Now, she gave her reasons, and I can't remember what. They were solid reasons. They were logical reasons. But, yeah, apparently the hepatitis vaccine is pointless for infants, but they give it to every single one as soon as it comes out of the womb. Bam, they get hit with the hepatitis vaccine. So, it's nuts when you, again, as you said earlier, Brandon, people don't want to admit they're wrong. man, you got to wise up sometime. Good God.
The worst is the arrogance too. Like when you talk to some of these nurses or some of these doctors, like when they offered us the Hep B vaccine or Hep B, I believe it was, vaccine in the hospital to our baby, and we had our reservations about it. Like we wouldn't sign that paper right away. We definitely took a look at it and wanted to know more about it. And they just gave us, like, everyone was giving us the dirtiest looks, and they were like, "Well, we're vaccine responsible in this hospital." And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, you guys are out of your mind. I mean, you're out of your mind for not allowing even the, like, they didn't do the studies. Like, it'd be one thing if you were talking to the doctor of the studies who's like, "No, I did the studies," and they were an honest person. They're like, "I did the studies and it's right." But you're just talking to some nurse who heard from a person who heard from a person who heard from a person that it's safe. And I heard from a person that it wasn't. And so I want to do my research. And they treat you like you're crazy for even considering doing your own research.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. There was a time in this country where people who thought for themselves, that was those were the cream of the crop. They still are technically the cream of the crop, but they're not treated as such anymore. Used to be those people were treated in pretty high regard, and now you're treated as some far right winger, conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat wearing freakazoid, because God forbid you have a little bit of cognitive dissonance about something you heard and you want to learn more before you form an opinion or make a decision. Now you're the crazy one. And that should tell you everything about government, about the medical system, the pharmaceutical system, heck, the food industry. If you can't question what you put into your body without some jackass treating you like you've got the plague, like, "Oh, get me away from this guy. He wants to think for himself." That's the problem. And we've also, now, I'm going to say this, and some people don't like it when you phrase it the way I'm going to, but that's what it is. I've talked to policemen and other people about that. But we have come to a point, especially after 9/11 and stuff like that, and COVID, that we've come to this hero worship of first responders, and now it's nurses and doctors. And when you do that, and you put them on a pedestal, the arrogance level goes up. And so when you decide to be one of those people who's going to question everything, they're like, "Well, apparently you didn't get the memo, because during COVID, I was the rock star here. You were some lowbie who didn't know any better, getting your horrible information on the internet." Like, no, I just like to make up my mind. I just like to make up my own mind. Well, we don't do that here. I'll make up your mind for you. You'll nod your head and go along, and then you'll get the heck out of my office when you're done. And it's like, oh, I don't know what kind of doctor's office this is, but it sucks. But it's sad that to be a critical thinker anymore is like you've committed some kind of horrible, heinous crime. Like I went up the block, found every puppy I could, and tried to be I was doing tryouts for a place kicker for an NFL team. I was just kicking the puppy as far as I could. And I have a buddy standing 10 yards away holding his arms up in the air like he's a goalpost and just trying to drive the puppy right through the uprights because I want to make my own mind up. And then Voodoo Queen says Nixon started the mandatory vaccinations for schools. But Nixon was just he was a great Republican, great Republican. Speaking of great presidents, folks, keep this in your brain for next year. Now, I am not one that's really good at organization. I don't have great organizational skills. Any of you that's known me for very long know this. I am seriously considering putting together, even if it's a small type of thing the first time, I'm actually wanting to put together a Coolidge Day event here somewhere around Owensville and just see how many Liberty lovers we can get to show up. We can talk a little bit about Coolidge, but we'll get some, myself, Brandon, Tom Martz. I can get Sam from Missouri Liberty Radio. We get a lot of people just talking about actual liberty, actual freedom. What's that mean? What that looks like, and then talk about Coolidge a little bit and say, if you really want to change things, then you have to elect more Ron Pauls, Thomas Masseys, and if you want a good president, you have to find your Calvin Coolidges. It is funny, Brandon, that the Republicans have their Reagan days and their Lincoln days. And I got all kinds of problem with Lincoln, and I've got a lot of problems with Reagan. But I got more problems, I think, with Lincoln than I do with Reagan. And the absolute worship, it should almost tell you something about the party. It's not that all the people that in the party or even reps or candidates running in the Republican Party all think that Lincoln was, the bomb. But when you have a party that has Lincoln days, and it's like, you mean the guy that suspended habeas corpus and started a war with the South and all that? That's the guy you're worshiping? That's the guy you want to name a day after when you're having your big campaign events is Lincoln days? Really? That's the guy? So, yeah, I would like to do a Coolidge Day next year. Like I said, get some speakers here, talk about freedom, talk about liberty, talk about some of the things about Coolidge, because, if you read a history book, Coolidge was horrible because he did nothing. He didn't have the government doing anything. But like Woodrow Wilson and FDR, those were great presidents because, we won world wars and stuff with those guys. Coolidge was just a lame-o because he didn't have the government handing out money and creating new systems. What a piece of crap he was. Well, that's the guy I want to celebrate. That's the kind of political philosophy that I idealize with more. So yeah, as the months come along, if I can find a decent spot to do it, even if it's a small one the first time, and we can maybe build on it or create a new movement of Coolidge days, that would be pretty awesome. But yeah, it's something to think about as we move forward. Again, I'm not the best at organizing any event at all, but I would like to try to put that on just to see what kind of response we would get, because most people just don't talk about Calvin Coolidge. I mean, they just don't. If people are looking at presidents that they look up to or admire, Coolidge just seemingly amongst most people is not on the list. Again, it's Lincoln, Reagan. Some people think Trump or Obama or Clinton. George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush. Those are the names that come to mind. Coolidge, what a loser. So anyway, that is coming up in the days and months ahead. All right, I want to play this clip. I'm just going to play it because I forgot what button I put what thing on because I'm dumb. But I believe the first clip I'm going to play you, and I was scouring YouTube today trying to find this clip. I couldn't find it, so I literally had to clip it from Dave Smith's Part of the Problem because he played it. I went to his YouTube channel, found it, recorded it to the board. This is Kamala Harris, because the title of this episode is Harris, the Horrible History Teacher. So Harris is going to give us a little lecture on isolationism and World War II. And again, I pray that all of our brain cells stay intact and we don't lose any IQ points after this goofball does her spiel. Let me make sure. I hope to God this is the right button.
The Cheney thing.
Oh, wrong one. That's next. Here it is.
Here you go.
Bringing the allies together is because they are fully aware of, and remember, to the Congresswoman's point, World War II. Remember, this concept of isolation, we were once there as a nation, and then Pearl Harbor happened. Let's remember, recent history. Europe remembers it well. When we got attacked, Pearl Harbor, we jumped in. And it is because America jumped in that we were ultimately able to win that war. And it should be a constant reminder to us. We have to remember history. That isolationism, which is exactly what Donald Trump is pushing, pull out of NATO, abandon our friends. Isolationism is not insulation. It is not insulation. It will not insulate us from harm in terms of our national security. So I say that to emphasize a point that the Congresswoman made. And the other point I'd make is also check out where he's been on how he thinks about America's military and service members. One of the great, great American heroes, a prisoner of war, John McCain. Remember?
Oh, okay, that's about all I can stomach of that one. And I'll let you just ramble on a little bit here, Brandon. I just got one thing I want to say before you set off here. Is that woman not? Is it not like we're sitting in elementary school and she's talking to us all like children when she talks like that? It's like she's talking down to everybody, like, I'm a teacher and I'm going to tell you how things were, and if you don't like it, and then she has to take a break and go hit a bottle of wine so she can get smashed and continue on her conversation because she's drunk all the time. So she's a drunk kindergarten teacher, but that voice, you know how it's like nails on a chalkboard? That's like the whole classroom of kids getting up and just raking the nails down the board, and you're just sitting in the middle, just goosebumps raising up and feeling like you just want to dive out the window just to get away from it.
So this is where she started. This is where she wanted to go. This is how she got there. That was insane. There are people on the internet. Dave from the live chat sent me over. There are people who actually try to argue that Kamala Harris is a good speaker. Like, there are people trying to, I gotta find it, but there are like the leftists on Twitter, the ones you see commonly blindly defending Biden and the Harris administration, the Brooklyn Dad Defiant, and the guys like that. But what did she? Oh. Anyway, here it is. Her name is Ali Samarco, and she said, Republicans keep saying Kamala Harris speaks in word salad because she speaks in an intelligent, nuanced manner. They are so used to hearing first grade level vocabulary that anything more educated than that is confusing for them. That's how the left plays this on the internet. And we're talking about the president who said, Russia is a big country. Okay. And Ukraine is a little country. Okay. And the big country invaded the little country. Okay. And that's bad. That's the person we're talking about. I mean, I have my own, I'm not going to lie, I love listening to Trump speak. I personally find him hilarious. I think he's a bad leader. I don't like a lot of the things he did as president, but the dude's funny, and I like that he is it's like relatable the way he just like mocks things. It's like the way you and your buddies mock things in public, and it's like, it's cool. It's not ultra intelligent, and I understand that, but to act like Kamala Harris is like the end all be all of intelligence, even compared to Donald Trump, it's just bananas. If you listen to things like that speech, and then, like I said, her Russia invading Ukraine speech, it's like, she is an idiot.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, that was that was a pretty solid impersonation of Kamala Harris. You did a good Trump one the other day, and now you've got this Harris thing nailed down. And that was David Dwyer's just losing his mind in the live chat. He's just got laughing emojis plastered everywhere. But that should speak volumes about people who back Kamala Harris. If they, and of course they're lying to themselves, they have to be. But if you honestly believe, Voodoo Queen's got that, where she saw her bus, she's like, the wheels on the bus go round and round, that whole thing. That was hilarious too. But if you're going to go with the message that Kamala Harris just speaks to intelligently, I don't know who you've been talking to. That means your whole life has been talking to infants who are trying to learn to form words. And so when you hear Harris speak, that's intelligent to you because every other human being you interact with can't even put like 4 words together to form somewhat of a sentence. That you're either talking to those toddlers and infants, or you're talking to people with severe dementia that just ramble incoherently because their brains degraded. But you clearly have not been talking to people who have any brain cells at all. You can't do that and go, it's just really intelligent. Hold on, I've got a visitor. Come here. Anyway, so I love how these people say these things. It's crazy. Yes, I know. I'm on a show and you're in my lap. But yeah, that's crazy to me that's the line that they're gonna put in the sand. If you can't deal with Kamala Harris, you're just not into this intelligent conversation. Like, it makes me wonder. I know people. There's that funny video where there's a black guy sitting in his car freaking out. He's like, "White people, why do you make your edibles so strong?" I feel like that's what I mean, most people just get baked and go off to another planet. I feel like Kamala's getting the absolute best edibles. But it's a really bad strain of weed where she just starts repeating the same words over and over again. But in her head, she's like, I'm knocking this out of the park. People are clapping for me. She has no idea what she's doing. No idea where she's at. But she's having a really great time. And
do you think she's going to arrest herself for taking the edibles?
I hope she does, and I hope she, when
Officer
it's time
Harris.
for her to get out of jail, she's like, nope, you can't get out yet. You are a horrible person. And she just keeps prolonging her sentence, and she just can't seem to get out of jail because she just permanently baked her brain. Like, I'm a terrible person. I shouldn't be out of jail yet. I'm dangerous to be out on the streets. That would be that'd be a wonderful way of doing things.
If she wasn't getting absolutely annihilated in like every statistic in this election so far, then yeah, she might be dangerous. But she's not even dangerous out in the public anymore. Like, anything can happen in the next, 10 days. They can do whatever to try to stop the steal. But from all what I've been seeing, as far as like the mail-in ballot turn-in and the early voting, it's going so far Republican that she's in the dumps. And as much as I hate on Trump, and I really, really don't like him, I do think it's better for the country if Trump is president than Kamala Harris. So I will say that. It's marginal. It's so marginal. It's so marginal. I don't think I'll pull the lever for either one of them. But, she is so much less threatening now than I was. I was very afraid that the media was going to trick everybody into being like, she's the most likable person ever. And I'm glad to see that momentum died.
Yeah, and that's I hate to say the words too, but it would be just a touch better if Trump was in office than Harris. Harris is because she will literally do anything that they want her to do. Anything it doesn't matter if it's war, she'll do whatever. She just wants that position. She wants that power. And Trump, yes, he's bad and he sucks too, but she is just, I mean, you might as well just, if you, like, you say you held up a picture of the United States and then you held up a cancer cell and you could just plop it right where DC is on the map. And that cancer is just going to grow. I mean, that's just, you're taking the U.S. for all its faults, our government with all its faults, we are still one of the most free countries in the world. And it's like, oh, this is somewhat healthy tissue. I think we should put cancer right here and then watch it metastasize and just spread like wildfire. Again, yeah, I'm not a fan of Trump by any means, but do I think that Trump would still be a little bit better than Harris? I think you'd have to be I think you have to be lying to yourself to say that that's not the case. Again, I would just assume neither one of them touched the White House. But yeah, at
Well,
this point, and the thing is, Brandon, I'm hearing libertarians saying, you know what, I'm done, and I'm going to play the clip here in a minute after you and I talk a little bit. But when Dick Cheney's daughter started going around with Harris and trying to convince Republicans that they need to vote for Harris, libertarians are like, that's it. They're literally going to vote for Trump because
can I gotta jump in there for just a second, because it's so frustrating to me. Because why, like, if you were gonna vote for Trump, like if you were gonna pull the lever for Trump, then at least let it be about something Trump did. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you? The libertarian argument forever, the reason we can't ever win is because people will always pull for the lesser of two evils. And then we continue to get more spending. We continue to get in more wars, no matter which Republican or Democrat makes it into office. And for you to not want to vote for, like, for you to make your vote go from libertarian to Republican because of something a Democrat did is so, like, I don't know, just misguided in my opinion. Like, I thought more libertarians, and I'm not trying to, like, bubble all libertarians together. And if you vote for Trump, vote for Trump. Like, voting for, like, whoever you vote for isn't going to make a ton of difference anyway. But I just think, you know, if you're going to vote for Donald Trump, let it be about something Donald Trump is promising you, or that Donald Trump is going to do this or that. Don't make it about something that a Democrat said or did. I find that just a little bit like, why is that the straw that made you? I don't know. I think it's either dishonest or you already planned on voting for Trump.
yeah,
You know,
I know one guy said that he was on the fence about it, and now it's just gotten to the point. Now, one of them wasn't because Harris and Cheney were together and trying to, you know, just say, oh, well, there's, you know, you don't have to tell anybody, you can vote for Harris. That's what Liz Cheney said. But it's the indictments, it's the two assassination attempts, it's all these things. And they know that, you know, like someone like a Chase Oliver or whoever's running the Constitution Party doesn't stand a chance. So they're like, okay, well, I'm voting for it's some of them. It's almost like, and again, I don't necessarily agree with it. I understand I understand the sentiment. I understand the mentality. I just don't agree with the outcome. They see everything that's happening to him, and it's almost like they're like, and Harris is so frightening. And also, to that point, the more they hear Harris talk and the thought of her, just the idiotic things that she says, like the clip that I just played, they're like, God, this woman absolutely cannot get in. And so they're just going to cast their vote to get more votes to Trump to make sure she doesn't get in, which is the exact same thing on the opposite end of the spectrum that happened in 2020. Anybody but Trump. Now it's flipped to anybody but Harris. We're playing the same game, but it's for the opposite cult, as Tom March so affectionately calls them. He's not wrong. But we're just playing the other side of the coin now. It's anybody but Harris. Again, I get it. That woman scares the bejesus out of me. She's a psychopath. She slept her way into powerful positions. She clearly doesn't understand any of the topic material unless she practices it for probably hours before she steps on a stage. And even then, she gets in an interview and it's like the connection between her and whoever's talking in her ear got lost and she has to wing it. So I get it. Yeah, the woman is scary. But we're playing the exact same game we did in 2020. And my fear is that this is what the elections are going to look like from here on out. That it's just going to be it's anybody but this person. So if the depending on who the Republican and Democrats run in 2028, one's going to be, well, they're both going to be horrible. But in the eyes of common people, the majority of Americans, one's going to be objectively worse than the other. And so they're going to be like, oh, anybody but that person. the Republican or the Democrat. And that's just going to be the cycle. That unless people wise up, that's going to be the election cycle we're stuck in from here on out until this country is collapsed, because instead of people voting their actual heart and with their brains, they're just voting for, again, the lesser of two evils. But the two evils seemingly are very similar. It's just the personalities and the propaganda that drives the wedge and pushes them far apart. And again, it works great because these statists, these central planners, the one thing they don't want people to understand is how much they don't need government and still be able to thrive better, to be more successful, to be more free to make their own choices. That's the one thing they can't. That's the one lesson they can't have people learning, is how little they need government. So we're going to get these wedge-driving politicians, and the people are going to get pushed farther and farther apart as time goes on. We've been seeing this for years, and it's just going to be anybody but that person. I think that's just going to continue on until people, maybe we luck out and people wise up and go, we got to change dramatically what we've been doing here.
Well, I just don't. So Donald Trump policy actually tends to dictate more of the Republican policy than like what a typical conservative value is, because Democrat and conservative values change over time. Like the Democrat platform from the early 2000s to what it is in 2024, and same with the Republicans, is vastly different. And so it seems like Republicans forever had a very pro-life stance, forever. I mean, it was unfeathered, unchanged. They are staunchly, pro-life. And now Donald Trump is like, I'm a little more pro-choice. I'm floating. And now you see Republicans slowly tending that way and moving that way. And so you're going to see a lot of, if Donald Trump prints more money to save Social Security and save Medicare, right? You're going to have people praising him for saving those programs, but he just printed money to do it. He didn't actually do anything policy good-wise, but you're going to have people praising him. What I don't want to see is the people who for 4 years were like nitpicking his every move. Now that they're supporting him in this election over Harris, they better stay true to their word that they're going to continue to nitpick him when he's in office. And actually, maybe he'll force Israel to make a peace deal or something. And maybe he will force Ukraine to make a peace deal in Russia. But the people who are, and you can vote for him or whatever, but there are a lot of people who claimed to not like Trump who are now cheerleading for him. And I want to see those same people give him hell whenever he decides to continue the status quo when he's in office.
And I think, and regardless, when we're talking, because this is a point I've made on Twitter before, or X, or whatever you want to call it, that it doesn't matter who you're voting for. If you're going to vote for this person, then when they do something wrong, please don't be a big baby. Don't be a wuss. Feel free to criticize when they make a bad move, because for the majority of what I see out of most Republicans and Democrats on social media, they absolutely refuse to criticize the person that they voted for, that won that elected position. They do unconstitutional things. They do immoral things. And for not all of them, but the majority are silent. And it's like that's the behavior I want to see changed. I think if we want to change the behavior, and I'm not saying fully, but we redirect the course a little bit, is that the American people openly criticize someone they voted for when they behaved badly. I think if you have a lot of Americans speaking out against the person they voted for because they were told one thing, and they get in and they act completely different, that the majority of those people stand up and go, hey, this isn't what you said, jerk. So fix it or we'll boot you. I think until that happens, when people are honest enough with themselves to criticize the person that they voted for and help get elected when they are acting in an unconstitutional manner, I think that's the only way we may change the direction a little bit. I'm not saying we're going to get a full change, but it's going in the right direction at that point. But right now, the majority will not do that. They refuse to do that because then again, like you said earlier, Brandon, they have to admit that they were wrong, that they got fooled. But it's better to admit that you were fooled than to continue to be a fool and to be a tool of whatever regime you're backing. It's that simple.
So here, I just don't trust that like if Mike Pompeo comes back in, let's say he's Secretary of State, then you have Nikki Haley, Secretary of Defense, and then you have Jared Kushner, senior advisor to Donald Trump. We are going to be in the Middle East for 4 more years at least. Like we're not like all of our military engagement problems are not going away with a Nikki Haley, Secretary of Defense, Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State. I mean, it's going to be very clear early on where Trump's presidency lands. And especially you're going to see if he, like all of the people that he's promised these things to, like RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, those types of people, they're either going to get official roles, like they're either going to have actual roles that matter, or they're going to be advisors. And then they're just going to be on the outside little wing while the establishment continues to run his little circle. It's why I think places like CNN, to their credit, has been very dogged on Kamala Harris lately. Like, obviously, they still bend over backwards to propagandize for Democrats, but they don't spend 24/7 going Trump, Trump, Trump. They'll show Harris making mistakes, and they'll press her on things. And I think that's because the establishment knows that when Trump gets back in office, it's not going to be that much different.
No, and it's unfortunately for us, but good for them. If Trump wins, they are going to have network gold for 4 years because they've got somebody to beat up on every day. Every freaking day they're going to beat up on him. And it just gives them nonstop stupid to talk about, but that helps their viewership. For all the people that hate Trump are going to go to their channel and listen to him talk trash the whole time. And so it's great for them. But I mean, it's bad for them, but I think business-wise, it's better for them. Tom March made a funny comment here. It says, Kamala talks more about Trump than Trump talks about himself, and I thought I'd never see the day that someone else talks about Trump more than Trump. That is a good point. And after that clip I played last week with her and Brett Baer, Biden's not running, Trump is, so Trump is, Trump. She just, and it's almost like if you say his name enough times, he disappears. Like opposite effect of Beetlejuice. If you say Beetlejuice 3 times, Beetlejuice appears. It's like if you say Trump's name enough, then, Trump disappears. I want to talk about something else real quick, too, because one of President Trump's former advisors or whatever is saying that he wished he had generals like Hitler did. And now Kamala's saying, well, see how big of a fascist he is. And they keep throwing the fascist word out, and they keep tying him to Hitler, which I wholeheartedly believe incites or incentivizes people to try to take him out because they actually think he's Hitler or he's the reincarnation of Hitler, that he's going to become a dictator and all these things. I'm like, if he was going to become a dictator, he would have done it the first time he was in office. So I don't know why you think he's going to do it now when he could have done it before and he didn't. But I think they're really, it's like, I think part of them wants it to happen. I really do. I don't care if it's Harris. I don't want to see a president get assassinated. I don't like what it does to the country because all it's going to do is they're going to make more laws against us. They're going to take more of our freedom away. But it's like they're pushing people to that end. And it's going to be the nutcases out there that they see a picture of Trump, they think Hitler, and it's like, oh, man, I remember what Hitler did, and I don't want that to happen in the U.S., so I'm going to take him out. I really feel like they're, at some point, they're literally trying to entice people into going to that extreme.
I wouldn't take it that far. I would just say that they have poor choice of words. again, calling him Hitler. People called politicians crazy names for forever. I mean, different pundits in the media and different people have compared people to all sorts of communist dictators and all this other thing for a while. So I'm not going to say that calling Trump Hitler is them pushing for his assassination, but it's just bitter irony because it's from the same people who act like words are violence all the time. It's just super rich coming from the crowd who like tried to make hate speech of not hate speech, but like tried to make like, you get what I'm saying, is that it's from the super soft lefty crowd is the one calling for this and the one acting like saying things like Trump is Hitler. And I'm like, if anybody on the right calls anyone Hitler or says anything like that, they lose, they go crazy. Like, oh, how could you, the rhetoric, but then they're the same party to call him Hitler. So I think the hypocrisy of it's great. I mean, people plot to kill presidents all the time. And on the campaign trail, I'm not going to, like, when I go knocking on doors or when I go to gun shows, I've been around some people who've threatened public officials just in casual conversation. And I'm like, it's a little strange to just be saying to strangers. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that them calling him Hitler is them trying to drive someone to kill him. But it is a poor choice of words when people are trying to kill him, like in secession.
I think, I mean, partly to what you said, but here's my problem. So there's been supposedly 2 tries on his life. I would think that if you were concerned about his safety, you would not continue to use those terms. If you really, because Harris and Biden, they just condemn the actions of the first guy. We don't do that here in this country. Yet they turn around a month later, fascist. Hitler. And he's a Putin puppet. He's this, he's that. And it's like, okay, if you're concerned about his well-being, then you should stop using those terms. You should stop saying those words. And they don't. They continue to use them. I get it. It works on the mentality of the people in their cult, and it gets them agitated, and it gets them active, so they're more activists, and they're out there trying to convince people to vote for their cult leader. But again, you're right. Poor choice of words. And I think at this time, when they're saying there's been 2 attempts on his life, that maybe you shouldn't use those words anymore. And if you continue to use those words and somebody else does try to do something stupid, don't sit there and act like you're so surprised somebody else would do this again when you're the one pushing that rhetoric. And again, it's awful rich of those people. You don't ever hear them saying anything bad about Stalin, and Stalin killed more people than Hitler. But you won't hear these people talk smack about Stalin at all. They'll bring Hitler up all day long. And again, Hitler was a terrible guy. Yes, I'm not saying he's less bad than Stalin. But they don't go, we don't want him to be a dictator like Stalin. It's like, I definitely don't want that either. He killed, 10, 12 million people. So, I definitely don't want a Stalin or a Mao. But it's always Hitler. It's like, why don't we bring up the other evil idiots that murdered millions of people? It's just always Hitler.
Well, you'll hear Trump say that, like, if Kamala gets elected, we won't have a country anymore. The Democrats are out to destroy the country. They're going to ruin everything. And so I just, I don't take the politicians' rhetoric, I guess, that seriously. Maybe I should be more concerned about the people who do, but I'm just, like, again, it's just rhetoric. Unless you actually say, like the one guy who tried to assassinate Trump, and then he posted that letter that was like, I'll give money to whoever actually does it or whatever. Like, that is wrong. The media posting that is not, that's the wrong thing, is that they're actually in, like, hey, there's an incentive. Someone said there's an incentive to kill Trump. That's the crazy part. But just saying Trump is Hitler, it's dumb, but I don't know. I don't think it's ultra dangerous. But anyway,
I'm just, it's one of those things where it's like, again, you
just given the circumstances, you would think you'd have better.
It's really in poor taste. It's like it's really dumb for you to say those things. I just got a notification somebody left or put a comment in the video here on Rumble, but I don't. Come on, what are you doing? I don't see anything, so I'm trying to see what the actual comment is. But let's see. Nope, I don't see anything.
And then if you have it, can we play that the compilation of her from the town hall, Kamala Harris?
Oh yes, the all the stupid and the
Yeah,
seven stupid things.
Yeah. So shout out to Colin Rugg. It's Colin Rugg with 2 G's on X. He breaks a lot of news, so he's definitely worth a follow on there. But he also does like these little compilations where like he'll take an event like the Al Smith dinner. He's where I got the Al Smith dinner video from last episode. So where he did the top 5 jokes that Trump did. So this is the top 7 just blunders of Kamala Harris. And this is all from one town hall with Anderson Cooper. This is not like a string. This is not like, oh, she's having a bad month and these are all. This is one night at a town hall with Anderson Cooper, like a couple days ago.
Yeah, let me pull this up and make sure it's not gonna blaring loud. But yeah, this is 7 worst moments of the night. So it's about almost 4 minutes long. And again, I pray that everyone keeps their brain cells.
Constantly saying, let's kick the tire on that. Let's kick the tires on it.
Is there something you can point to in your life, political life or in your life in the last 4 years, that you think is a mistake that you have learned from?
I mean, I've made many mistakes, and they range from, if you've ever parented a child, you make lots of mistakes too. In my role as vice president, I mean, I've probably worked very hard at making sure that I am well versed on issues, and I think that is very important. It's a mistake not to be well versed on an issue and feel compelled to answer a question.
So you've been in the White House for 4 years. You were vice president, not the president. But why wasn't any of that done for the last 4 years?
Well, there was a lot that was done, but there's more to do, Anderson. And I'm pointing out things that need to be done, that haven't been done, but need to be done. Thank you, Eric. And you're absolutely right. You know it. I know it. I think most Americans know it. Price of groceries is still too high. Well, I may not be quick to have the answer as soon as you ask it about a specific policy issue sometimes, because I'm going to want to research it. I'm going to want to study it. I'm kind of a nerd sometimes, I confess.
2022, 2023, there were record border crossings. Your administration took hundreds of executive actions. It didn't stem the flow. Numbers kept going up. Finally, in 2024, just in June, 3 weeks before the first presidential debate with Joe Biden, you institute executive actions that had a dramatic impact, really shut down people crossing over. Why didn't your administration do that in 2022, 2023?
First of all, you're exactly right, Anderson. And as of today, we have cut the flow of immigration by over half. In fact, the numbers I saw most recently, illegal immigration
But if
is
it was
low.
that
But
easy
hold on,
with
let me
that
finish.
executive action, why not do it in 2022, 2023?
Because we were working with Congress and hoping that actually we could have a long-term fix to the problem instead of a short-term fix.
You couldn't have done one and both at the same time?
Well, here's the thing. We have to understand that ultimately this problem is going to be fixed through congressional action.
Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't.
But you're agreeing
So
to a
come
bill
on.
that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill. Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur,
So
Anderson.
you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense, because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
Okay, so first question, Brandon. Be honest. Does she not sound drunk? She sounds drunk to me. She slurs. She's she stutters, she stammers, and then she's got the hyena laugh. She sounds drunk. I honestly believe that she is 3 sheets to the wind when she's talking sometimes.
Well, picture this. You wake up every morning for 3.5 years, and your boss is Joe Biden. I'd be getting tanked at work too. Oh, heck yeah. I'd be boozing up like crazy. I'd be worse than her. I'd be like, listen, we got a problem. We got to solve the problem. Actually, I'd probably be about the same as her. But either way. My point being is that, I mean, yeah, she's an idiot. But if I would be drunk too if my boss was Joe Biden.
It's just I don't know, dude. I struggle with the fact literally every time she talks. I struggle with the fact that people are like, "Yep, that's who I'm voting for." Seems like a solid choice. Seems like she really understands the issues, understands government's role in our life. Definitely wouldn't tiptoe us towards World War III or anything like that. She seems like the most intelligent candidate running for office right now. I struggle to see. Sometimes I think it'd be cool to see what's going on in other people's heads, but at this point in time, I don't want to. Unless you can put filters on it to get all the weirdness out, just to try to understand what part of your brain is identifying with a Kamala Harris and to identify her as someone who's intelligent and with it and cool and hip and brings joy and change and all these other words that they throw around. Your brain must look like a Barnum and Bailey circus tent on fire. The animals are rampaging. People are scurrying for cover, getting trampled by the elephants. And you're just like, this looks perfect. This is what I dreamed of. Like, no, it's not supposed to be this way.
So one thing I think is interesting with the media right now is that no one is calling Donald Trump racist on the border anymore. No one. It's silence. Like, they'll call him racist on other things, and they'll say he hates the troops for fake reasons and this and that. But you haven't heard a word about even the leftiest of leftists calling him a racist about the border. And I find that super interesting because normally even the crazy leftists, they'll hold on to their crazy leftist position and like defund the police. Like, I'm sure if you went online, you could find the defund the police people still defending their ground. But you can't find anybody calling Donald Trump, like on the left. No one calls Donald Trump a racist for his border policies anymore. And that's so, like, it's so interesting to me because you would think that there would be that part of the left wouldn't have gone away or that they wouldn't stop on their movement. Because normally they don't care if it hurts the Democrats. They're going to keep like with their, like they have an agenda and they keep pushing it. And they'll eventually vote for someone like Harris and they'll be like, because we can't let Trump win, but they won't ignore like things they consider problems. And so I think it's strange how a lot of the left has completely given up that the Trump is racist because of the border thing. It's gone completely.
And that, to me, that speaks on the media is not saying it anymore either. They're going a different direction. Now they've changed direction and now he's unhinged. He's irresponsible. He's too dangerous. So once the media stops parroting the racism thing because whatever candidates no longer parroting racism. So if the candidate's not saying anything about him being racist, the media stops saying anything about him being racist, and then the people who are in the blue cult stop saying anything about him being racist. So it stems from if the candidate says it, the media says it, then the people say it. And it's just one big, I talk about Harris and word salad. That it's frightening to think about, but can you imagine going into a restaurant and they're like, "Oh, we have the Harris salad bar over there." And you're like, "No, thank you. There's E. coli all over that salad. I'll pass. Can you give me a prepackaged salad from Walmart? I'd feel much safer eating that than the Harris word salad that you've got over in the bar. And you go over there and there's just lettuce and cheese and the eggs are all rotten and they're just spread out all over, and there hasn't been any ice
a
pack.
mess.
Yeah, there's no
it's
ice.
all over the floor. It's on the ceiling. Everything within a 10-foot radius of that bar is just covered because there is no control. That woman, if her words were putting together a salad, it would be all over the place.
It looked like the Swedish chef from the old Muppet Show where he's just throwing the ingredients and they're going airborne. It'd be like the Swedish chef Harris salad bar. Yeah, you'd go over there to get salad and you're like, what the hell happened over here? Like, well, it's it's about as put together as she is. And you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're doing now. That would be hilarious if you had a restaurant and you just sectioned off like a little area, like, and made a second salad bar as a joke and went, oh yeah, that's the Harris salad bar over there. And you go over there and it's just empty. And they're like, there's nothing here. And it's like, yeah, we know it's empty like her head. And so we apologize. That would be freaking hilarious. You're going to tick off some of your customers, but it'd be fun in the process. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to play this other clip because, again, Harris is bragging. I don't know why you'd brag about having the support of war criminals, basically. And so Tim Walz was on with Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart was giving a little bit of flack. And I love how Walz, you'll hear this just momentarily, but I love how Walz tries to like just wallpaper over it and just bring in these other two names and just try to like paste over and like, oh, nothing to see here. It's just Cheney. But listen to his reasoning and then use all your brain power to go, well, that doesn't make any sense if I know what a libertarian or a constitutionalist is. This doesn't make any sense. This guy's full of crap. Here's the clip.
Here you go.
Hit the wrong button
Cheney
again.
Thing. Do we really have to do that?
Look, it goes broader than that. Look, Bernie Sanders, Dick Cheney, Taylor Swift.
No.
That one.
No.
The shooting?
No.
Having the Cheneys on board?
Nah. You can't Dick Cheney or Taylor Swift. No.
We're a big tent. We're a big tent.
What country did Taylor Swift get us to invade? No.
Yeah. No, don't you think, though, that, and I do this, I believe this, there is still a core group of folks out there, your point being, and not joke, the don't tread on me, the Reagan piece of this, the libertarian piece, but the constitutional piece,
yes.
There are a lot of people out there. I think Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney give permission to those folks who want to find a reason to do the right thing. It doesn't mean they agree with us. We're not going to take their foreign policy decisions and discussions, and implement those. We're going to take their
promise?
Yes, promise.
Yeah, I don't believe that and at all. They're going to do whatever they can to stay in power and make powerful friends. To sit there and pretend like they're not going to take their foreign policy into account, BS.
Is Dick Cheney known for, like, am I missing something? Or is Dick Cheney not only known for the Iraq War? Like, I thought that's what everyone knew him from. They made a whole movie about how he, like, after 9/11, basically ran a shadow government with the Department of Defense and did whatever he wanted in power and, like, made everyone at Halliburton a bunch of money. I thought that's what he was famous for. I don't know how you could even attempt to proudly boast his endorsement and then also to rope in the constitutionalists and libertarians. It's the most out of touch a political party could possibly be with the American people. I mean, that's one thing. Like, I don't like, obviously, don't care for Trump, but his approach to this election was in touch with the American people, and clearly Kamala Harris's was not.
Well, and the thing is, too, this is the same guy. Dick Cheney was the same guy who was the bane of everyone on the left during George Bush's presidency and the following years. You said Dick Cheney around somebody who's progressive or liberal and watch their head explode. And now they're like, oh, Dick Cheney's okay, well, I guess maybe he's had a change of heart and his family's all for Kamala Harris. Okay, I guess maybe they've had a change of heart about murdering every brown person they can find. No, no, they haven't. They're looking again. I'm not saying that Trump is some strong guy, but they're clearly looking for the people they can manipulate the most and will make them the most money off of war. And that seemingly looks like Kamala Harris. Now, I want to say one thing. You know, when let's say Trump gets in and he's like, "Hey, we're going to pull troops out of a bunch of countries and we're going to bring them home and we're going to put them at the border or whatever." The thing is, when he was president last time, the generals refused his orders to pull troops out of places. They're like, "No, we're not doing it." So it's like, okay, I hope that what is it, Colonel Douglas McGregor. If Trump was to choose anybody to head up the Department of Defense, I would hope it would be McGregor, because McGregor has brains and he looks at things on a level other than, oh, how much money can we make off this? He understands geopolitically how things evolve and what's the right course of action, what's the wrong course of action, what's a losing proposition, what's a winning proposition. So unless he gets a McGregor type, yeah, it's not going to be anti-war. They may not have as much war as they want. It's going to be fewer wars. I'd say that maybe is a safe bet. Israel, Palestine, oh, he'll fund that all day, every day. He may, again, as you said towards the beginning of the show, he may say, look at Ukraine and Russia and go, hey, you guys got to work something out. Get this. I'm not going to fund this anymore. Figure it out. Let's come to a deal. Let's do the peaceful thing here. Israel, he'll give them all the money in the world. He may continue to fund Saudi Arabia to blow up Yemen, things like that. What we may have a few less incursions into areas where we shouldn't. And that terrorizes people like the Cheneys of the world because they don't have somebody in there who will blow up anything they tell him to because, well, again, they stand to make a lot of profit off dead bodies. And that's, to me, that's the only difference between Harris and Trump.
Yeah, I don't think Trump's going to be any better on China. Trump seems to be a very hard China hawk, so I think he's going to continue to float a bunch of stuff in the South China Sea, spend a bunch of money there, please the military-industrial complex there. Just since I know we're getting close to the end here, but I know that Israel is striking back at Iran, who struck back at Israel, who struck at Iran, who struck back, blah, blah, blah. I just want everyone to remember during these we have to pick a side. You're either with Israel or you're a terrorist moment, is that those are two countries halfway around the world that are nowhere near us. We shouldn't be funding either side.
Yeah.
Not to mention that Iran is friendly, they're an alliance partner. They have a partnership with the BRICS, who just had a big meeting in Russia where China, the leader of where Xi Jinping was there, the Indian president was there, and obviously Putin was there in Russia. But it's news stories like that don't get shown in the media that the American people really need to hear about. Is that like all of the people we're fighting or that are against us are all uniting, like economically, strategically, and with their resources. They're all uniting against us. Like, we should not be provoking these conflicts. We should, if you want the world to change, what you need is someone at the Department of Defense or the Secretary of State, who is like a true business leader, who has no ties to the military-industrial complex, but understands like the business movings of each region and how they could work together and benefit each other, instead of someone who was literally paid by a weapons manufacturer 6 months ago.
Yeah, I don't know, dude. I think the Iranian president was there too, and he was talking about the whole thing with Israel, and then I've seen different reports that North Korea sent several thousand troops to Russia to help fight Ukrainians. I mean, we just keep creeping ever so closer to a really big war that could be catastrophic on so many levels, and yet the media is really not talking about it. They're not talking about how bad this could be. And neither are either one of I have not heard any clips of either candidate saying anything in depth on this. They give these general answers, but they're not going in depth to say how dangerous this really is. If they talk about the dangers, it's Iran is dangerous, China's dangerous, Russia's dangerous, but nothing about our foreign policy and how we have caused a lot of these problems to begin with, and say how much of it is as this government's fault. They don't want to talk about that. And that's the most frightening thing to me, is we're getting stirred up about, rightfully so. We should be stirred up about the two choices that we have, especially Harris. It's frightening. But we're not hearing enough about our foreign policy right now, and seemingly that somebody else is running the White House, because Biden's clearly not. We're entangled in all these in these different countries, and the media is just silent. It's like, hey guys, don't you want to know what's going on? Or you're so worried about making sure that Trump doesn't get reelected, that you might help put somebody in office who will march us right into World War III without batting an eye? And you guys just don't seem concerned about that? Huh. Okay, that's kind of strange. From a group of people who are supposed to be all about the truth and democracy, but you don't want to discuss how dangerously close we're edging to a major battle with a nuclear superpower, maybe multiple nuclear superpowers if you don't watch your step. Don't want to talk about that. That's interesting.
Israel has destroyed more hospitals than Iran has killed Israeli civilians this year. More hospitals than Iran has killed of Israeli civilians. It's just, I don't even like to play this game as much. Like who's the better person in this fight? Because we shouldn't be funding either side. But we're funding the side blowing up the hospitals. And they tried to claim, the IDF tried to claim that the hospital that they blew up in Beirut was being used by Hezbollah. And there's no proof of that. There have been several journalists. In fact, they blew up a hospital in Gaza, and 100 American nurses and doctors who'd been over to that region signed a letter saying they'd never seen a single Hamas militant member doing any military activity in the hospital. And the 99 American doctors had spent over 5,300 hours in that hospital. And not a single one of them said they'd ever seen any sign of any Hamas activity in the hospital. And Israel, all they have to do is like these blind fake claims. And every American news media just runs with it as if it's the truth. Like they act like IDF is like the direct factual source and that they could never be wrong and that everything released from every other news source couldn't possibly be true. And it's just so, I mean, we're so on the wrong side of history, like the American politicians are, that it's just crazy. It's not even that they have to be isolationists, or like I would love for us to just be isolationists, but we're on the side of the bombers, of the hospital bombers, and my tax dollars are going to it.
Yeah. I've heard this argument so many times, and I still hear it. There are a lot of people who are Christians that think that, they have to. The Bible tells them they have to support Israel. It's like, are you supposed to support the government of Israel, no matter what they do? Or are you supposed to pray for the well-being of the Israeli people, of the Jewish people? I think you're getting confused here. The Bible does not say support the Israeli government. It doesn't say anything about a Netanyahu type figure, and you're supposed to support that person no matter how many evil acts he perpetrates and how much funding he's given to Hamas to destabilize a region. No, it says nothing about that. And people are getting, and again, we got, I remember, I don't know how many times I've said this. I remember during George W. Bush's, the second Iraq war, a minister by the name of John Hagee standing up in front of his audience on the Bible Network and saying that Iraq was the new Babylon and we have to destroy it. And everybody in the room standing up and applauding. And it's like, what are we doing? What are you doing? You're leading people. Christianity is supposed to be the religion of peace, and you're propagandizing people, Christian people, into supporting an unconstitutional, unnecessary, immoral war. You're displacing tens of thousands of people into other countries. You're causing problems throughout that whole region. And, come on, people, you got to smarten up.
Well, just since you happen to bring it up, Netanyahu was on the floor of the United States Congress addressing a joint session when, in 2002, pushing the Iraq has weapons of mass destruction line. That was 22 years ago that he was propagandizing Americans into going to war in the Middle East. And 22 years later, we're still falling for it from the same guy.
Yeah, I've heard Scott Horton mention this several times about, that Netanyahu, Israel really wanted us to go to war with Iraq. They really, really wanted us to go to war in Iraq. And it worked. It worked out perfectly. And now the push, and seemingly a lot of people seem to be on board, the next new evil that Israel would like us to go in and blow the crap out of and again, terrorize the region and not really fix anything is Iran. Now they want us to go in and invade Iran. And if we're not careful about who's in the White House, seemingly both of them would probably be on board with it. One of them just be a little more gung-ho than the other. They're going to be pushing for Iran. Whoever's the next president, that's going to be the push. We need to invade Iran. And there have been multiple people in the military that said that you think Iraq and Afghanistan was tough. Iran is an impossible country to invade and defeat simply because of the topography of the land. We cannot win in Iran. It is literally the only thing you could do is nuke it out of existence. But you are not going to put troops in there and win. You're not going to run an air campaign and win. You cannot. But Israel, does that affect them at all? Does that phase them in their thinking? No. They're going to keep giving a bunch of money to a bunch of Congress critters and trying to entice them into saying, well, we don't care what the UN says. We're not going to declare war with Iran constitutionally. We're just going to, authorize, or what is it, the use of military force or whatever, authorization of military force act, and we'll just send troops into Iran and we'll help the IDF fight, Hezbollah in Iran. And it's like, come on, guys. What are we doing here?
Not to mention, I mentioned this on the last episode, but Iran sells a lot of its oil to China. So if we start a conflict with Iran and China can't buy its oil, whose side do you think they're going to be on? Not the side invading Iran, because Iran has signaled, obviously publicly, they haven't done so as much. But if you really pay attention and you know the way that these geopolitical movements work, Iran has signaled they don't want this fight. And so that's the craziest part to me, is that they took out senior IRGC leaders in Syria. And that's what prompted the first strike. And then they struck back. And so then Iran struck again and hit Iran's military bases. But they still didn't kill anybody. They blew up some runways the first time, and the second time they sent a bunch of drones over Jordan, and 99% of them were blown up by the Iron Dome or by American forces in Jordan before they ever got to Israel. And so you can clearly see there's a pattern that Iran they're not intending to strike deep inside of Israel right now. They don't want that fight. It is the West bringing that fight to them, and a repeat of history for the millionth time of something we do in the Middle East for Israel, which is bad for America.
It seems like they're doing this playbook where, Israel strikes them, and as a show of force of we're not going to take this, they will send a measured strike in response. Now they do it very measured. Again, they don't target the Israeli population. They're targeting military outposts or whatever. And that's basically what this is. Israel hits them and they're like, all right, well, we're going to fire a volley in return. Again, a targeted response. They do not want to incite war. This new president and some of the other people in the top establishment of Iran does not want war with the United States. They've said so, and they're acting in that manner. But because we have a foreign nation who is spreading millions of dollars in a building in Washington D.C. to get to sway opinion, and of course they're going to work very hard on the president and Department of Defense and everybody else. They're going to push really hard for this. I wish I had enough time. Vivek Ramaswamy and I think Charlie Kirk or somebody was at a thing together, and so some kid stands up and starts talking about AIPAC, and Charlie Kirk's like, well, they're American citizens in AIPAC because our Congress critters couldn't take money from a foreign country, so these are American citizens who are lobbying. Basically tried to turn around like, what are you just anti-Semite because you don't support this? And that's not what the guy was getting at. It's like, this is heavy lobbying. Yes, they may be American citizens, but it is in benefit of a foreign nation. That is a problem. That is a major problem. When you have someone giving millions and millions of dollars to almost everyone in Congress, influencing foreign policy, possibly influencing the start of an invasion of a country, that is a problem. It's not right. Anti-Semitic to say that.
And it also doesn't have to be illegal or it doesn't have to be against the law for it to be blatant corruption. Like, you're taking money and it influences your decision. Whether you legally obtained that money to influence your decision is moot. You took the money and it influenced your decision. That's corruption. That's like the simplest, most basic definition of corruption. You let undue money affect influence your decision, influence your voting on going to war and things. Like, it is corruption. You can try to say that it's legal if you want, but it's still wrong. It's still wrong to sell out your vote and your values.
Yeah, I hate that. I really hate to see that people that I think are genuinely pretty intelligent people still fall to their knees for a foreign nation, and in such almost a religious fanaticism. And anytime anybody speaks ill of even AIPAC, they immediately go to, what are you anti-Israel? You anti-Semitic? What's your problem? It's like, no, dude, I'm just tired of foreign nations, influencing our government. And also, I'm tired of having politicians in office who are so willingly taking money from that's of foreign influence. I'm sick of both. I'm sick of the AIPACs of the world. I'm sick of having so-called representatives in a big building in a city on the East Coast, easily influenced and making decisions that could possibly start a world war that easily without much thought.
I would love to know how many of those AIPAC handlers that are American citizens have dual citizenship in Israel. I'd love to know, because I bet, I don't know for sure, but I bet it'd be a high rate of people who have dual citizenship, or at least family ties, super strong ties to the country of Israel. It's not like a bunch of just regular concerned citizens for the nation of Israel.
There is definitely ties to Israel. There's no way, there's not. That's not just a bunch of do-gooders trying to, that really want to help out Israel. All right, folks, so that's going to do it for this week's show. Another barn burner, another lot of good stuff to talk about tonight, and stuff to get you all fired up and keeps you awake for 2 hours after you worked a long week. So that's a bonus. But anyway, again, that's going to do it for this week's show. We appreciate everybody in podcast land on YouTube, Rumble. Oh, yes. And make sure I got to put I'll put the link in the description again to check out our Printify store and some of our T-shirts. Brandon has sent me 3 new designs. The CIA, which Criminals in Action. FBE, the Federal Bureau of Entrapment. And then another shirt that says less 1984 and more 1911. It's got a nice picture, a nice silhouette of a 1911 45 ACP right below it. So I'll put the link to our store in the description. We'll get those shirts added whenever I can. But thanks for the reminder, Brandon, because I just about skirted right past that. But anyway, folks, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. Again, to those of you on Rumble, YouTube, MOLibertyRadio.us, or in podcast land, we greatly thank each and every one of you for your continued listenership and support, and we'll see you all next week right here on the Missouri Liberty Report.